Hi, welcome to the Cafe Genius Impresarios audio program, episode 12, recording on 18 May 2023. That's Thursday, May 18th. I am your solo host, Dan Hugo. Today we have no guest, which is good because you take a break and we're lining up a few cool people to talk about cool things in the near term. So let's jump right into the coolness of communities of practice. Communities of practice were proposed sometime around or a bit before 2015 by anthropologist Lave and Etienne Wenger. There's a Wenger website authoritative on the topic. There's an introduction to communities of practice there, published June 2015. There's a link to that in the show notes, so please do check that out. I'm only going to barely scratch the surface in this episode today. Communities of practice are groups of people who share a concern or a passion for something they do and learn how to do it better as they interact regularly. It sounds very simple. It is not. A real community of practice includes intention and direction of some kind and is almost certainly incompatible with the notion of serendipitous collision. Why am I pointing that out? Because reasonably recently, there was the notion that serendipitous collisions could foment innovation, creativity, advancing a cause, merely by being near each other, merely by constraining the volume in which people were hanging out. They would tend to run into each other and they would make the magic happen. The community of practice notion is almost at the other end of the spectrum. It says that you are actually designing your interactions to accomplish goals, to pursue a common interest, to do the same sort of thing, to make things happen, but with intention, not luck, no fate involved. So community of practice, you can think of it as a planned gathering or meetup, virtual or in real life, where you actually want to accomplish something. It sounds crazy. Community of practice is something that I propose that we need in our Greater Vegas Entrepreneurial Ecosystem in order to accomplish some of the solutions that have been proposed in the recent document published by Mo Collins for the state GOED, the Governor's Office of Economic Development, in pursuit of our entrepreneurial ecosystem growth and development and ultimate success. Or I use that word because it's sort of vague, but certainly health and well-being and individual success of the people in it. Whether the entire ecosystem can be successful, we shall see. So we've established what a community of practice is in the most basic of terms. First of all, community or communities? That's a good question. Of course, there should be multiple communities of practice. A community of practice on its own could be 2 people, 10 people, 100 people. And certainly there could be multiple communities of practice. So you need both. You need the singular and the plural. If you do visit the Wenger website, I'll link in the show notes, you will see there's a note there that not all communities are communities of purpose. If a community, especially a geographical community, a neighborhood is the example they use, a neighborhood is not necessarily a community of purpose. It could be a community. Sometimes it's barely that. But a community of purpose is deliberate, or it should be. And I would argue that if it's not deliberate, then it may be a community of practice in name only. But the goals of the community of practice should be clear and are what the community, the people in it, are focused on and pursuing together, perhaps, or at least in some type of collaboration. So one of the things that we enjoy here in Las Vegas, in the Greater Vegas area, is the notion of insular communities. And this is not just me saying it. It's we'll say it's common knowledge. Maybe it's uncommon. Depends on how often you get out. So insular communities, not isolated. Isolated communities are a different story. Those are communities that are proactively avoiding interaction, engagement, bridging to other communities. That is not so common here that I am aware of, although ironically, we don't always know about them. An isolated community will keep to itself, but we may never know they're there. So who knows? But insular communities just tend to stay to themselves. There are several communities in the Greater Vegas area that are facing challenges that are similar to yours, are trying to overcome obstacles to success of their community members, of their sort of group goals, their individual goals. Maybe it's business, maybe it's health, who knows? It could be anything. But one insular community and another insular community may share these, and they won't even know it because they don't talk. So communities of purpose, when they are insular, I will posit that they are making poor use of their resources, time, energy, other. If they actually collaborate, if they find out what is common, they can perhaps gang their efforts and make better use of the time and resources that they were spending on their own. I would also posit that a community of communities is essential in our Greater Vegas Entrepreneurial Ecosystem moving forward, so that individual communities of purpose of practice, probably both, individual communities of practice can pursue their goals, of course. And then when there are elements in common, there are challenges, there are goals, there are ways to collaborate with mutual benefit, then they should work together. And how do you coordinate that, especially if they tend towards insulation? Well, what if we had a community of practice that was made up of people from different communities of practice? Crazy. So that's what I would posit, that a community of practice made up of other communities of practice might help to determine and make better use of what people are doing, what they have, what they need, and ideally make progress, which is the ultimate goal of the community of practice, to learn from each other and to advance their causes. One of the things in the Greater Vegas ecosystem that I have myself pointed out in previous podcasts, but also in some research that we've been doing at the Genius Roundtable, which I have talked about in previous episodes of the audio program, that Vegas culturally tends to be something of an assurance game. I would also posit, in addition to my previous suppositions, that an assurance game as a component of our culture, as the way some people operate, a large number of people, and this is not an attack on people, but it's just the way the culture is in my observation. So subjectively. Objectively, we'd have to actually measure, take some survey, probably some behavioral analysis. But subjectively, if Greater Vegas is an assurance game or games, I would suggest and posit that this erodes community, especially communities of practice. And I will tell you why. Do you encounter assurance games in our Greater Vegas Entrepreneurial System? Well, you probably do. Let me describe it. An assurance game is, in game theory, sometimes called the stag hunt. Suppose you and 2, 5, 10 other people agree that you are going to pursue a goal, and you let's say you don't have cell phones. So let's say you're going to trust each other that you are going to advance the cause, you're going to collaborate, you're going to work together. And in the example, in the name, the stag hunt, suppose we are this group that I've constructed. Suppose we are going to work together to hunt. Sorry for vegetarians, vegan folks, but it's a thought experiment. You're going to hunt for food for the village, right? So the people that are going to be in this community of practice are going to assure each other that we are going to help. We're going to corral. We're going to track down. We're going to eventually take down, and all the trappings. I'll leave that there. So the stag hunt, collaboration between multiple people, assuring each other that they're going to participate for the greater good. Unfortunately, what happens in the game, in the thought experiment, they call it the hare, a rabbit, a small animal, goes hopping by, and one of the people in the group who has assured the others that they are going to participate in the greater stag hunt, says, I can grab that hare, go home, feed my family. I'll get mine. They can take care of theirs. That's only one person. I'll just take this and go. So if multiple people do that, before you know it, the stag hunt kind of breaks down and you end up with not enough people, maybe no people, that are actually pursuing the original goal. You got your hare, which is enough food for maybe one or two people, or one meal. And again, sorry, vegetarians. But the stag hunt was a greater good proposition with multiple participants assuring each other that they would collaborate. And that breaks down when self-interest rules. So why am I suggesting this? Because it is not uncommon, and I know you'll say, well, it's like this everywhere, but we are here in Vegas. Unless you're listening from somewhere else, then maybe it is true where you are. There is a tendency for people to not show up. I don't want to RSVP for that event. Or if I did RSVP, I'm still not going to go. Or maybe I'll go, or maybe I won't. Maybe I'll say I'm going to go. Someone the other day used the term floater. That is not how a community of practice would function, surely. That's like saying, I use the volunteer firefighters as an example often. You cannot volunteer to be a volunteer firefighter and then be a floater. Like there's a big fire. Yeah. Oh, I didn't know I was supposed to show up. Thought I was going to be a floater. So you can't have that. If you're just going to have a part-time or non-committal participation, the community of practice starts to break down. So that's why I'm saying there's community erosion when people are not motivated with intent, with direction, with intentionality. Really, that's the key, right? I want to be a part of this thing. I'm going to commit to it, and I'm going to show up. And I always say, Woody Allen, you may not be a fan of his. He is something of a despicable character from most perspectives at this point. But he did say at one point, 80% of life is, or success, depending on which quote you're looking at, 80% is showing up. And I would add to that it is also the other 20%. So showing up for meetings, showing up for your community of practice gatherings, discussions. Maybe there's a work group. Maybe you have homework. Actually doing your homework. Actually being there for the other people. What's often lost in the shuffle, in my anecdotal experiences, is that people will assume that their time can be removed, can be factored out. Oh, I'm not going to go. I'll go to the next one. I'll skip this one. I didn't do what I was supposed to do, so I won't go. I have other things to do. I won't bother anybody by letting them know, by un-RSVPing. So the problem with that is, and to go back to the firefighter example, sometimes you're one of the people with the buckets. The bucket brigade needs you. And if you decide to not bother anyone by telling them that you're not coming, there may be a bunch of buckets waiting on you. And that fire is still burning. So the notion is, if you're going to be in a community of practice, you treat it as though it is the most important thing in the world for at least that 1 or 2 hours or whatever the meeting time is, right? You treat the time the other people are putting in like gold. The entire community of practice is important, not only to you, but to the other people in collaboration. As a volunteer myself for the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, I face a similar challenge because often people will volunteer or be interested in volunteering, and they will say, can you explain everything to me? Can you enable me by doing this, that, do more documentation, do more presentation? And I have done that many times. And then that person or those people don't show up. They kind of disappear. So as a community of practice, the Innovate for Vegas Foundation has a lot to work on. As an army of one, I can only say that I'm trying to do my part. But it's definitely something that involves everyone in a particular community. And it takes effort. It takes work. It takes commitment. It takes communication. So we have the Genius Roundtable, which I have designed not explicitly. I kind of, I'll tell you exactly what this experiment was and is. if you have a round table and you have a King Arthur at it, the reference hopefully obvious. King Arthur is the king, and there are knights at the table, and there is at least a one level deep hierarchy. If you do read the story, the round table was so that all were equal. There was no, head of the table versus not head of the table. But, if you had a king sitting at the table, that's fine. If it's just the knights, totally different. So the Genius Roundtable, by design, is entrepreneurs on the ground, so to speak, in the Greater Vegas Entrepreneurial Ecosystem. So they have firsthand knowledge. They've been there, done that, wearing the t-shirt, or at least they have it at home. So when you have, we'll call these type A, they're type 0, they're the 1%. They're people who are proactively doing things. They're entrepreneurial. And when you sit a bunch of entrepreneurs at a table, you're not going to necessarily have people looking for leadership. They're going to be bringing their own. BYOL. So, and that's fine. That's part of the design, was to enable not to have a dictatorship or even a benevolent dictatorship. It was about having a lot of ideas brought to the table, literally, physically, and exploring them in pursuit of the overall health, understanding, comprehension, strategy formation of our own Greater Vegas Entrepreneurial Ecosystem, so that we would ultimately, over time, over probably a longer time than, say, a year, longer, we will have done a deep dive, we'll have a greater understanding of, and maybe some ideas and direction toward this health, wellness, success. So in a perfect world, the Genius Roundtable would be, by its own design, whether emergent or from the get-go, a community of practice. But what I found is, because there are so many type 0, type A, whatever your favorite term is, we all have our own notion, and we are also very busy people, so we have not been a community of practice that is pro-communication and sort of cohesive. So very easy to fall into this trap. So my admission of guilt. But again, not a dictatorship. So it's not a magic wand that can be waved over your community or mine. To make this happen, you have to have buy-in from all the people participating, the people sitting at your round table or your picnic table or your kitchen table or coffee table, wherever you are. Everybody kind of has to be on the same page. And if you're not, it's very easy to find yourself saying, why are we having these meetings? Or nothing's getting done. And what I've found myself, I've lived in Las Vegas for 10 years. What I've found is that when meetups and when gatherings, when intent is not steered, or when there's not that purpose associated with a community of practice, you can very easily slip into a community of chit-chat. Basically, you'll end up with a social gathering. If you take a classroom, right? People, if you call a classroom in a school a community of practice, there's a teacher, there's students, they have a purpose, they're there at the appointed time, they do their homework, they're graded. That part's not relevant. If the classroom is focused on the task at hand, they're doing their work, they're learning, the teacher is teaching, there's grading of homework, there's taking of tests, and so on, well, then probably advancing the cause. If the community of practice breaks down, if there's this is infamous scenario, the substitute teacher doesn't know everybody's name and so on, and then the classroom will very quickly devolve into a social gathering. I think we've all seen it. We remember it. Maybe you are living it right now. I don't know how old my audience is, but the take home is that it's very easy without, we'll call it that intentional buy-in, the direction, the intent, and being on the same page with that intent across all participation. It's very easy to have that slip into, well, we can just kind of hang out. I sometimes have the pitch mingle is one of our pitch practice events. And that one very easily slips into chit chat or bouncing ideas off each other. Not destructive, but also not in keeping with the purpose of the gathering itself. So these things happen all the time. And unfortunately, what could happen, and this is my observation, not scientific, purely anecdotal, what could happen as meetups and gatherings and possibly communities of practice lose their way, if that purpose, that goal, and the sense that it's that the effort, the time spent is advancing the cause toward that goal or goals, well, then you'll see participation drop off and you see confidence wane. And I have suggested that there's a certain contagiousness, a contagion that is apathy. So community of practice may start off strong and be off to a great start, in fact. And then if it erodes, if people give up or they take their own self-interest and they slide, they don't show up for a meeting, they blow it off, they don't RSVP, they don't communicate, they lose interest, that becomes contagious, and then that becomes contagious across other groups and communities. It becomes a thing that becomes commonplace, if I can say become a few more times. It's something that I believe infects others, because once you have become frustrated or tired or fatigued, if you feel you're contributing more, if you're still going after that stag and everyone else has caught their hares and gone home and you're by yourself, or maybe you were one or two or three other people, it's very easy to slip and say, oh well, kind of give up. Then when it comes to the next stag hunt, maybe somebody else is proposing it and you might think, last time we did this didn't go so well, and there are some of the same people involved this time, so it seems unlikely that it will go well, and maybe you don't want to participate, or maybe you're the first one to catch a hare again in the stag hunt sort of canonical example, the assurance game. If you want to look it up, I'll put a link in the show notes to this too. The stag hunt or assurance game. It's just game theory. You've all heard of the prisoner's dilemma. The two prisoners decide whether they should stay silent or speak, and that affects their punishment. So it's kind of like that. It's slightly more complicated, but not much. So who benefits? What's the strategy, the optimal strategy to participate in an assurance game, if that is true? And I assert, I suggest that the culture of Las Vegas does lean towards an assurance game. And I believe that does erode the community of practice notion, insofar as we are able to gather people to conduct a community of practice effort for as long as we can. And I think that becomes more difficult without true commitment from a rare breed of people who are not always easy to find. They're here. They are here. I have found several. We need more. So that's where I will suggest that we do it. We go forth and practice. So I mentioned the Genius Roundtable already. The Genius Roundtable started with 6 other people, myself and 6 other people. And we had an initial set of OKRs, objectives and key results. We spoke regularly. There were sub-meetings. There were, we each had an assignment. We took it on. And a month later, for our next consensus scheduled meeting, right? So we were able to all agree on a time that worked, so we wouldn't cancel on each other. We wouldn't not show up. So we were committed to appearing, and we did. And we shared our progress, and we set the next meeting, consensus schedule, and we met. It was going well, but that's difficult to keep up, apparently. So not as strong as it was initially. We need some shepherding. We need some discussion. We need to make our community of practice one of our goals, and that's the tricky part. I believe that most people think as long as people show up, we're doing fine. But there's always room for meta-analysis, self-assessment, grading one's own efforts. And so we did start off doing that. We need to focus on it again. Mid-course correction. It's easy to do if you actually put in the effort and if everybody agrees that it's worth doing. If those things are not true, it's not as easy. But So what can you do? You should proactively plan and curate your community of practice. I said purpose again. I kind of think they're similar, but community of practice, because practice means you are practicing these behaviors, best practices. Yeah. So you have a purpose, community of practice, and to yield a return to the participants and advancement towards the goals of the community. Community is, in this case, the group of people in the community of practice. If you've ever heard the term community property state, the community is the married couple or the couple that is not married but is still a community property community, right? You have to treat yourself as a community whether you're married or not in states that have those laws. So a community, technically, in this context, is the people participating. A community of practice is a group of people that are actually engaged in proactively advancing their cause, collaborating, working together, communicating. So the community of practice is something you can start yourself, and you should make it a proactive goal for yourself. You're going to actually pursue, first of all, reading what a community of practice is. It's not long, not difficult. There's a lot of aha. I am quite familiar with this already. Just never put it into practice. So consider doing that. And the other thing we can do, you may actually already be in a community of practice. You may be in a work group, in a special interest group. Maybe you're in a chamber of commerce. Maybe you're in an owners association or other business league. Maybe you're in a union, something like a union. Maybe you're just in a group of people who collaborate on things. Maybe you're working on a special project. Maybe there's a volunteer effort you're a part of. These are often, they could be ad hoc. They could be ongoing, right? Maybe if you volunteer around the holidays, I know there's a turkey, turkey is one of the items, but there's a Thanksgiving event that happens near Atomic Liquors. Adon, if you're listening, we'll see if we can help out with that this year with some of our volunteer tools that we're thinking about. But a community of practice can come together for a shorter period of time, and they have a goal. They communicate, they accomplish the goal, and they collaborate in doing so, right? So these are totally possible. They happen all the time. We don't really know about it. We don't really think about it. And maybe we're a little bit amazed when things work out, and maybe we're not so amazed when they don't, because we allow serendipity to take over. But if you have that intention, you have that drive, I think it is possible to make an efficient and actually practical, productive, and satisfying community of practice. And then at the end of the tenure or even ongoing milestones, you'll find that you're doing things and accomplishing them. And you can look and see that each participant has also taken away something. They've learned, they've grown, they've developed a new skill, maybe they've received some recognition for their efforts. And that's a good start. So community of practice, it's something that I hope that we will look at more often and more frequently. Those are the same words. I would like a meeting we had recently about the different insular communities of the Greater Vegas area, actually trying to figure out what they're working on. That's a challenge right there. We do not have a culture of sharing that information, so that will be an uphill climb. I would propose that a community of practice forms and proactively reaches out to individual communities of maybe insular or other practice. They're probably doing effective things, tackling their own goals. They may not be aware that others are doing something similar or have, and I say, concerns and challenges. So my community may have the same concerns and challenges that yours does, but we just never speak. We don't know. We have developed skills and ideas to tackle ours. You've probably done the same. What if we work together? What if we collaborate? What if we even know about each other? We might have several aha moments, and we might even have some friends in common. We might know each other. We just had no idea that we were doing the same thing. So I would propose a community of practice form at the top of a fictitious tree or pyramid, and start to engage with other communities, whether they're communities of practice or just communities, just regular groups of people, and then see what they're up to, see what we can sort of glean from each, and come up with connections, a network graph, if you will. Who's doing what? Who needs what? Who can do what? Who can bring what to the table? Who can benefit, and so on and so on. So a community of practice to establish and connect other communities of practice and still other communities. That's where I'll leave it today. So thanks for listening. This was episode 12 of the Cafe Genius Impresarios audio program about communities of practice. Stay tuned for upcoming episodes. Be sure and check the show notes. We are on more platforms as I record this today. Google, Amazon Music, Podcast. Those are, I think, the same software, but we are available on a variety of platforms, probably more coming. Self-hosting our own show notes is going to be the way to go, so they're always readable, findable. The link should always be clickable. We will rely less on LinkedIn, which is itself absolutely not a community of practice. Look for primary content to be self-hosted, available in other places, but our own community of practice, closer to home, is aiming for taking back control of our message, being able to use technology, tools, methods, and connect with people without having profit motives and algorithms, the likes of LinkedIn and others, in the way. So that's where I'll leave it. Again, check the show notes. Looking forward to some guests in the near term. Listen to our old shows. Glad to have you today. Thank you for listening. Hey, only 32 minutes. How cool is that? Bye-bye.